The story begins as the female lead anxiously glances at her watch, standing in front of the building, all set to meet the person she's aiming to bring some sunshine to. Years ago, they sat before Yatsuha's pet's grave. Seeing her heartbroken, he vowed to become a veterinarian so she'd never have to grieve over a lost pet again. As she gave him a puzzled look, he grinned and revealed his ambition to become a vet for their furry friends. Hearing this, she beamed with joy and hugged Yuchi. Over time, he treasured the moments they shared, from playtime to hitting top marks on tests, even impressing Yatsuha. But then she dropped the bombshell. She was switching schools. He saw her off at the train station, managing to put a smile on his face before she disappeared into the distance. As he waved goodbye, he couldn't help but wonder about his love for her and wished her nothing but happiness. Years later, Yuchi slumps in his chair, absent-mindedly tugging at a worn book page, lost in distant memories. A classmate snaps at him for neglecting his cleaning duty, but his confused mind doesn't register it. Frustrated, the boy yells again, ordering him to wipe the whiteboard. Startled, he jumps up, stammering apologies. The class erupts, scolding him for provoking the bully again. As he rises, his desk is littered with cruel messages. During his school's off time, he walks down the corridor, quietly reciting motivational lines from his notes. He's trying his best to stay positive, but the mocking laughter of bullies behind him chips away at his resolve, pushing him deeper into isolation. Opening his assigned school cubby, his heart sinks. His classmates have emptied their trash inside. The sight fuels his depression, but he forces himself to see progress, reminding himself that things are still better than in middle school. Holding on to his dream of becoming a veterinarian, he pushes forward. On the train ride home, a sense of relief washes over him as he checks his previous result sheet, his best performance yet. Right after receiving a message from his mother to buy dinner for the family, he hurried to get it. Though he completed the task, a sense of fear lingered. His mother's temper was unpredictable. As he arrived home, his sister greeted him, but the sight of the house overflowing with trash made his anxiety spike. His mother, looking disheveled with messy hair, sat glued to her phone, lost in her own world. At the dining table, he ate quickly, wanting to finish so he could focus on his math. But before he could gather his thoughts, his mother suddenly questioned him about his frustration. Without waiting for his response, she snapped, accusing him of wondering why she hadn't prepared dinner instead. Overwhelmed with sadness and frustration, he tries to explain himself, but his mother refuses to listen. She keeps scolding him, convinced that he's blaming her. With a sharp thud, she slams her hands on the table and stands abruptly, her disheveled hair falling over her face as she yells. She rants about her endless responsibilities, running to the hospital, taking multiple medications, and juggling a part-time job, only to be reprimanded by Yamato-san and Nozaki-san. Then, turning back to him, she lashes out again, accusing him of judging her when all he has to do is attend school without a single real worry. In a fit of rage, she throws the dishes aside, furiously blaming him for ruining her appetite. Stunned and overwhelmed, he stammers apology after apology, even blaming himself for making her so angry. Tears well up in his eyes, but he holds them back. Entering his room, he shuts the door and sinks to the ground, burying his face in his hands. Exhausted and drained, he grips his head, trying to process the chaos. But after a deep breath, he forces himself to stand, determined to focus on his math. With newfound resolve, he moves toward his study table. As he switches on the light, his gaze falls on childhood pictures with his friends, and among them, a soft, smiling image of Yatsuha. A wave of disappointment washes over him as he remembers the happiness he once had, a stark contrast to his life now. Trying to focus on his math, his mind keeps drifting back to the bullies at school and his mother's terrifying temper. Yet despite the weight of it all, a small smile appears as he thinks of Yatsuha's innocent childhood face and the promise they'd made to get into Hokushin National University and become a veterinarian. Just thinking about her gives him strength. No matter how painful life is, no matter how much others torment him, even if the world itself wants him gone, he decides to stay alive. If not for himself, then at least for her. As he struggles to hold on, the crushing weight of his situation makes him question everything. He begins blaming himself, scolding his own existence, and doubting if Yatsuha was ever a real reason to stay alive or just an excuse. With his hands gripping his head, the voices of depression urge him toward a darker path. In his mind, he envisions Yatsuha, no longer the kind, innocent friend he remembers, but a cold, angry figure. She looks at him with disappointment, showing no interest in his dream of becoming a veterinarian. Instead, she scolds him, echoing the same cruel words that torment him daily, urging him to end it all. The vision is so intense that, in desperation, he covers his ears, begging her and his own thoughts to stop. But the overwhelming darkness doesn't fade. His hands tremble as he sets his pen down. In that crushing moment, convinced that even Yatsuha wants him gone, he makes his final decision. At the same time, something strange happens. Yatsuha, with her childish smile and a slight blush on her face, happily pulls the curtain aside and greets him. Lost deep in his thoughts, he looks completely confused at this unbelievable situation. As soon as he recognizes her, his face remains frozen in shock. Noticing his bewildered expression, she sighs in irritation and reminds him about the letter she sent earlier, where she mentioned seeing him very soon. She excitedly reveals that she transferred back to his school just a short while ago. With great confusion and disbelief, he immediately moves closer to the window. She is standing outside, on the second-floor ledge. Shocked, he stares at her, unable to process the situation. Beaming with excitement, Yatsuha happily admits that she just wanted to meet him as quickly as possible. She points toward the building next door and explains that she jumped directly to his window because it was the shortest path. Hearing this reckless explanation, he grabs her in concern and quickly pulls her inside, wrapping his arms around her in a protective hug. Seeing him after so long and feeling his warmth, she blushes, her heart swelling with happiness. But just as suddenly, he pulls away, leaving her confused. In his mind, she had urged him to die. The vision of her cold, scolding face still lingers in his thoughts. On top of that, he has no memory of the letter she mentioned. Anxiety and depression creep in again, twisting reality around him. His thoughts are interrupted when she excitedly offers him a pack of chips as a moving-in gift. When he looks at her in confusion, she cheerfully explains that they might be a little crushed since she accidentally squished them between her ankle and the wall while jumping. But she assures him they still taste just as good. She tries to open the chips pack with determination, not embarrassed, but with a smile. She decides not to make a mess in his room, so she sits down and continues her efforts, focused on opening it. Seeing her struggle so much, he, still in disbelief, takes the pack from her and effortlessly opens it. With a burst of excitement, she thanks him for his cleverness, and as she takes a chip in her mouth, she thanks him again for making sure no chips went to waste. She then invites him to take a bite. As he takes one, he drifts into his thoughts again, but she, holding 2 chips at once and placing them in her mouth, calls for his attention. When he looks at her, the sight of the 2 chips in her mouth makes him smile for the first time. The way it makes her look like a little duck is undeniably cute, just like she wanted, to make him smile. Suddenly, she rushes toward his desk, her excitement palpable as she grabs his veterinary medicine books. With glowing enthusiasm, she looks at him, and he, still confused, watches her closely. Without warning, she rushes toward him and hugs him tightly, confessing her love for him and admiring his unwavering passion to become an animal doctor, even after all these years. Realizing the depth of her love and affection and finally coming to terms with the fact that he had lost sight of his own dreams, he gently holds her hand, admiring her kindness, cuteness, loving nature, and so much more. His hand softly rests on her cheek, a tender gesture full of warmth. As she again confesses her love, her words stir something deep within him. Overcome with emotion, tears fill his eyes. He pulls her into another hug, this time with even more affection. Feeling an immense sense of gratitude that he hadn't given up on life despite the overwhelming struggles. Understanding his pain, she taps gently on his head as if comforting a child and promises him that everything will be all right. After some time, he apologizes to her, feeling incredibly sleepy. With a smile, she agrees to go home. As they climb the stairs and walk through the living room, she unexpectedly apologizes to his mother for interrupting her, leaving her completely baffled. As Yuchi hands over his shoes to Yatsuha, his sister suddenly shows up, looking totally dumbfounded when Yatsuha greets her and warmly welcomes their father, who has just returned home. The entire family is left puzzled by her unexpected visit, giving her confused looks. But Yatsuha, undeterred, beams brightly and waves at everyone, hoping to see them again. As she gazes outward, her demeanor goes from warm to icy in an instant. She addresses everyone, his family, the bullies, Uchi's killer, blaming them for pushing him to the brink. He walks beside her, wondering what she's on about. When she turns back to him, her mood shifts back to sweet. With a loving smile, she vows to conquer the dark fate that haunts him. As she bids him farewell, she thanks him for the walk home and looks forward to their next meeting. As she leaves, Uchi lies down on his bed, still torn, unsure whether to feel happy or not. At school, everyone had once been kind to him, but behind his back, they mocked him, calling him awkward. No one ever wanted to sit with him, labeling him as boring. Now with the thought that Yatsuha might also change into one of those cold people who once wished him dead, he feels a deep sense of fear and sadness. Gripping his blanket tightly, he sinks deeper into despair, his eyes filling with tears. His thoughts spiral, changing direction every few seconds, and finally, overwhelmed by the weight of everything, he falls asleep, still crying. At almost 4 a.m., he wakes up to Yatsuha's blushing face and cheerful greeting. Confused by her sudden presence in his room, she excitedly admits to sneaking in through the window again. As he struggles to process the situation, shocked to find her on top of him, she laughs, playfully leans in closer, and says she just wants to be with him. Startled, she quickly moves away, wondering if she might be too heavy. Now lying beside him with a flushed face, she places her hand on him, happily expressing her joy at seeing him again this morning. Still lost in confusion, he stares at her, but when he finally notices her uniform, excitement takes over. She's joining his school. She grabs his hand, eagerly suggesting they go to school together, excited about spending the whole day with him. As he gets ready to change, she shyly steps out of the room, her face flushed. When he comes out in his uniform, she gazes at him with an emotional, blushing expression, admiring how cool he looks. Before he can respond, she hugs him tightly, overflowing with love. Though he's still wary of her sudden change, he blushes, deciding to cherish the moment until she eventually returns to her colder self, stealing a glance at his own innocent, flustered face. He becomes both scared and worried when his mother suddenly appears at the top of the stairs, her hair wildly waving around her face like a ghost. She seems to be hiding something in her hand. The moment she notices Yatsuha in their home, she scolds her for visiting every day and orders her to leave, claiming she has an important conversation with her son. Before Yatsuha can respond, she gets pushed away, but instead of getting angry, she simply heads downstairs with a secretive smile, discreetly holding Yuchi's bag and cheerfully wishing to see him again soon. As she steps out of the house, her cute and innocent expression shifts to a serious one, determined not to let his mother do anything wrong to her beloved Yuchi. Noticing the kitchen door slightly open, she cautiously steps inside, her suspicions growing. The sight before her is unsettling, piles of trash and garbage scattered all around. Meanwhile, Yatsuha calmly enters the kitchen, coldly lighting a piece of paper on the stove, watching it burn. Back in the room, his mother continues shouting at him, but the sudden fire alarm interrupts. Without hesitation, Yuchi immediately rushes toward the kitchen, leaving her behind. As he runs off, his mother, who had been secretly gripping a sharp knife, suddenly slashes her own hand. Blood spurts from the deep wound, yet instead of acknowledging the pain, she blames Yuchi, accusing him of being responsible. She cries out that if he had just listened to her instead of running away, none of this would have happened. Upon arriving in the kitchen and seeing only the alarm blaring with no fire, Yuchi stands there, confused. Just then, Yatsuha peeks in, her expression innocent yet concerned, as she sweetly asks about the alarm. Still puzzled, he hesitantly dismisses it as a malfunction. Letting out a small sigh of relief, she suddenly brightens up, holding out his bag and shoes, playfully insisting she took them by accident, though it's obvious she did it on purpose. While he remains bewildered and uneasy, she gently places his shoes down and beams at him, cheerfully suggesting they head to school together. Meanwhile, in his room, his mother, still clutching the blood-covered knife with her wounded hand, stands with a disturbed mind, determined to show him her pain, believing that this would stop him from abandoning her. But as she approaches the table, her eyes fall on a burnt piece of paper. It was the family photograph, half burnt, where only Yuchi remains standing happily, while she and her daughter are fading into ashes. The sight shakes her to the core. Overwhelmed, she staggers back before collapsing to the ground. On their way to school, Yatsuha remains cheerful, playfully moving around, while Yuchi, still uneasy, clutches his motivational card. Noticing her curiosity, he awkwardly admits that reading it on the way is his habit. She immediately smiles and apologizes playfully. Before he can even glance at a motivational quote for confidence, she suddenly hugs him, expressing her joy over his decision to become an animal doctor. Then, with an excited grin, she teases that he's doing it just to make her happy and tells him he's free to choose any other path. But when he firmly states that he truly wants to be a veterinarian, she blushes and hugs him again, happily showing him a picture of her cute dog, gushing about how it plays all the time. Though walking with her makes him feel lighter, as they reach the train station, his anxiety creeps back in. He grips his bag straps tightly, dreading an encounter with the usual troublemakers. But the moment Yatsuha notices them, her cheerful face shifts, her expression turning ice cold and dangerously sharp. As they step onto the train, Yuchi freezes in fear upon spotting three familiar figures, his former bullies from middle school. His hands tremble as he tries to make himself smaller, avoiding eye contact and hoping they won't notice him. He silently reassures himself that they won't bother him anymore, thinking they must have lost interest in him like an old toy. Maybe they'll just laugh a little and move on. However, the leader of the group suddenly notices Yatsuha. His curiosity piqued, he nudges his friends, and they begin making fun of him about his taste in girls. Uchi, already hiding behind the other passengers, and Yatsuha feels his body grow weaker as memories flood back. Times when they forced him to eat animals, mocked him endlessly, and even worse, when one of them wrapped a long cloth around his neck, pulling it tight under the excuse that his existence disgusted them. Just remembering it makes him feel sick, his stomach churning as if he might vomit at any moment. Noticing his fear, Yatsuha glances at him with a soft yet unreadable expression, her eyes filled with something deeper than concern. As the gang notices Yuchi, they smirk and move toward him with malicious intent, ready to harass him. But just as they close in, they suddenly freeze in shock. Yatsuha, blushing deeply, wraps her arms around Yuchi with surprising affection. Yuchi stiffens, completely caught off guard. His mind struggles to process what just happened. She looks up at him, still flustered, and without hesitation, slits her hands inside his jacket. The gang stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend the situation. Before they can react, she takes it even further, offering for him to do the same. Yuchi hesitates, confusion clear on his face, but eventually he follows along. As he places his hands inside, a soothing warmth spreads through him. Without realizing it, he relaxes and gently hugs her back. The gang remains frozen, struggling to understand what they just witnessed. The leader finally snaps, stepping forward with an annoyed expression and shouting at Yuchi to stop showing off with such ridiculous behavior. But before he can do anything, Yatsuha, sensing Yuchi's discomfort and noticing the train approaching the next stop, cheerfully suggests they leave. Without hesitation, she takes his hand, and they quickly exit the train together, leaving the stunned gang behind. As the gang notices them leaving, they quickly follow. The leader, smirking, pulls out his phone, holding a humiliating video of Yuchi, one he once recorded while tormenting him. With the phone in hand, he moves toward them, eager to show Yatsuha. Yuchi, still holding her hand, walks quickly, unaware of the threat behind him. Just as the gang closes in, Yatsuha casually tosses a 100% free food pamphlet from her bag onto their path. Two of the leader's subordinates instinctively pause to check it, momentarily distracted. The leader, however, remains focused, pushing forward angrily. Approaching the entrance of the fifth gate, Yatsuha receives a message from a friend mentioning loud noise nearby. Thinking fast, she pulls a newly purchased textbook from her bag as an excuse, but instead, she intentionally drops a fluffy teddy bear toy. Acting surprised, she excitedly picks it up and eagerly shows it to Yuchi, stopping right in front of the fifth gate entrance. Yuchi looks at her, confused, unable to grasp her intention. Without a word, Yatsuha suddenly crouches down and carefully places the small teddy toy truck just a centimeter away from the deep train tracks. At that moment, the gang leader storms toward them, shouting in frustration. His loud voice makes Yuchi shiver with fear, but Yatsuha remains unfazed, her expression turning cold. As the leader nears, he starts mocking Yuchi, taunting him for avoiding him for so long. Meanwhile, Yatsuha subtly observes the scene. The leader unknowingly stands just a few centimeters from the toy truck. As the gang leader shouts at him, Yuchi suddenly hugs Yatsuha tightly, his voice trembling as he pleads with the bully not to harm her, insisting she has nothing to do with any of this. The leader, now even more irritated, scolds him loudly, hurling insults. While still holding Yuchi, Yatsuha discreetly peeks at her friend, who was waiting for her response, and on her signals to alert the station staff, without hesitation, she sprints off to do so. Meanwhile, the bully continues berating Yuchi, but Yatsuha, playing along with her plan, teases him with a smirk, mocking him for being jealous of Yuchi. Her words hit a nerve. His frustration escalates, but she doesn't stop. Grinning, she praises Yuchi's talent in sports, his kindness, and even his cuteness, emphasizing that these must be the reasons for the bully's jealousy. Yuchi, panicked, grips her shoulders, his face tense with fear, desperately trying to stop her. But it's too late. Her playful remarks push the bully over the edge. Enraged, he yells that he's not jealous and, in a burst of fury, leaps toward Yuchi, phone in hand, ready to strike. At that exact moment, his foot lands directly on the teddy bear toy Yatsuha had carefully placed earlier. Losing his balance, he stumbles backward, falling straight onto the train tracks. His phone slips from his grasp, landing beside him. Right then, the station speakers announce the train's arrival, urging passengers to step back. Just as the train speeds toward him, panic spreads through the station. Even the driver looks alarmed. At that moment, Yatsuha's friend rushes in with the station staff, urgently pointing toward the fallen bully. The staff member immediately yells at him to move toward the platform. In sheer terror, he scrambles along the tracks, crawling as fast as he can. Just as he pulls himself away, the train rushes past, narrowly missing him. Though he survives, he's left panting heavily, his face pale with shock. Meanwhile, his phone, still lying on the tracks, is completely crushed under the train's wheels. A crowd quickly gathers, including his two lackeys, who arrive with confusion, demanding to know what just happened. Yatsuha, seizing the moment, dramatically clings to Yuchi's coat, pretending to be absolutely terrified. With wide, innocent eyes, she insists she has no idea how any of this happened. A large crowd gathers as the station announcement informs everyone that the train will be briefly stopped for a track inspection. The station inspector moves toward the tracks, while murmurs of fear and shock spread among the onlookers. Yuchi, still confused and shaken, tries to process everything. Yatsuha stands quietly behind him, appearing nervous, but in reality, she's completely calm. Meanwhile, his two friends stand beside the station staff, anxiously watching. The bully, still trembling, slowly climbs up from the tracks. His face is pale, his breathing heavy, and tears fill his eyes. His friends rush to his side, concerned, but he barely hears them. The near-death experience replays in his mind, how he had always tormented Yuchi, telling him to die. And now, after coming so close to death himself, an overwhelming fear grips him. Yuchi watches in surprise. For so long, this guy had terrorized him, making him tremble in fear. But now, seeing him in such a broken, terrified state, Yuchi, despite everything, can't help but feel sorry for him. At the same time, Kazuya's eyes widen as he notices a masked woman in the crowd, Aoki-tan, a well-known streamer. She's live-streaming the entire scene, her camera focused on his tear-streaked face. With a playful yet mocking tone, she tells her viewers how this jealous guy tried to attack a couple but ended up tripping himself straight onto the train tracks. She laughs, making the situation even more humiliating for him. Although today's stream was supposed to be about something entirely different, she had received a mysterious message earlier that morning, clearly sent by Yatsuha. Aoki-tan, seizing the chance, arrives just in time to film Kazuya boarding the train after a night with the girl he was cheating with. However, she captures something even more interesting. Noticing the camera, the bully Ito erupts in anger. He lunges forward, grabbing her collar and demanding she stop recording. But it's too late. Her live stream is already broadcasting his meltdown to countless viewers. His friends panic, frantically trying to defuse the situation. Meanwhile, Yatsuha, completely unfazed, excitedly takes Yuchi's hand and cheerfully leads him out of the station. As they step onto the escalator, Yuchi, still holding her hand, trembles slightly but feels something different this time. For the first time ever, he isn't scared. He clenches his fist, silently motivating himself. Seeing him finally free of fear, Yatsuha's face flushes with happiness. Her excitement grows as she watches him take this step forward with newfound confidence. Meanwhile, the live stream continues, capturing the chaos at the station. The staff grabs Ito by the collar as he lashes out after harassing the streamer. Viewers flood the chat with anger, scolding him harshly. Some call out his disgusting behavior, while others start identifying his friends and directing their outrage toward them as well. On the way back to school, Yuchi's thoughts drift to the past. He remembers how Ito was the reason he was relentlessly bullied, not just by his middle school classmates, but even in high school. What always confused him was why his new classmates, who knew nothing about him, also turned against him from day one. His assigned desk had already been vandalized with cruel messages, filled with insults, heartbreak, and depression-inducing words. The moment he stepped into class, everyone treated him with disdain, throwing harsh words his way, deepening his isolation and despair. His thoughts are interrupted by Yatsuha's cheerful voice as she excitedly points to a patch of clovers growing nearby. With a bright smile, she picks one up, carefully plucking a petal and tying it around his finger like a ring. Her face flushes with happiness as she playfully claims that just like this flower, she will bring joy into his life. Yuchi stares at the petal with confusion, still processing her words. Meanwhile, she twirls around happily, declaring with absolute confidence that she will erase all his bad memories and fill his life with happiness. Just as he repeats her words, she freezes for a moment, realizing she might have revealed too much. Quickly, she hides her clover-shaped watch and, with an exaggeratedly cheerful expression, insists that she was only talking about bringing fun into his life, and also guaranteed about her good results along all this.